How's the intro go again?
What up, all you dwarves, elves, and wizards? Welcome to a new episode of Sweet Sweet Fantasy.
Yay!
We're back.
We're back.
So, what book did we do this time?
Bringing the book that brought us back together. It's Deadly Education by Naomi Novik.
Wow.
And it's kind of new. I was trying to think about when it came out, but time is such a flat circle right now that it's not really new. It's like from the fall.
Oh, well, that seems like eons ago, though.
Yeah, but I had it on pre-order, and I feel like I just finished it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, it was really good, and I was like, to me, and I thought there's a lot to talk about.
There is.
I felt like it was a weighty young adult book.
It was kind of a weighty young adult book. Is that the category? It's young adult? I guess it would be, huh?
I don't know, because I'm in my 30s, and I still feel like it applied to me, but it is about school children.
Well, how did it apply to you being in your 30s?
Well, the main character was grouchy and antisocial, which I really related to. And she was constantly just second guessing her friendships and her relationships with people, in terms of how useful she was to them. And that I could also definitely relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, to me, a story about how to be a good person and how to know which instincts are right when it comes to being a good person.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, high school was a good place to set it, because that's definitely when I think you form your values most, or you start to question your values. But it was a good book even just to read this year, because there's so much discussion of how do you be a good person? How do you be a responsible member of society? What are your obligations? How do you form boundaries with people, and what's appropriate and inappropriate? And so I don't think it's just in high school. You're kind of always through life trying to figure that stuff out.
Right, and also what people want out of you when they're hanging out with you. That was a big, huge theme in the book.
And it was just I really felt those scenes where she's in a group of people and trying to think I need to make myself useful in order for them to accept me. Mm-hmm. There was no thought in her mind that people were just her friends because they enjoyed her company.
Yeah, no, never.
And I was wondering, and it is I think it's demonstrated pretty strongly that it's not just in her head. She's got serious magical powers that make it hard to be around her because of the type of chaos and anxiety she just generates.
Yes.
As a person, which is a cool metaphor for just having a hard time getting along with people and having your own insecurities pushing people away, and you not realizing that you're the source of the social anxiety is coming from you, not from other people. Mm-hmm. But I think in this book it was oh no, she's a chaos wizard, and she could destroy everybody at any time.
Mm-hmm. That was really cool. I really like that, how they kept her, how you as a reader, at least me as a reader, I always felt wow, I can't wait for her to actually use her power at some point, because it keeps on alluding to the fact that it's infinite and crazy and dark and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. But what was I going to say? Oh, to play devil's advocate against that, one thing that I will say is she was pissed off all the time. There were certain interactions with Orion where I was all right, cut the kid a little bit of slack, because it's he's doing all right. But she would never ever always, no matter what, F you, Orion, always. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I initially had the same reaction as you, and then I was kind of why do I care if she's mean to this kid? He's annoying. He's just some kid who keeps following her around. If she doesn't want to be his friend and she thinks he's kind of an idiot, and the ways in which he was an idiot, I really liked, because it was just the kind of thing where a lot of kids are assholes and they don't realize the impact that their actions have on other people. He wasn't trying to do something bad, but it's his fault they got in this the whole situation in the book.
Right.
No
good deed.
It's all his fault, and he could. And okay, so maybe we should give a brief just like a brief summary.
Yeah.
So the book takes place in this place called the Scholomance, which is a like an online learning for young wizards, pretty much. They go there. There's no teachers. The school just sort of gives them assignments. Like assignments pop up. They have obligations. There's some structure to it, but there's no teachers. All of the stuff just comes from the school. And like a book will appear out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, that's my homework for the day. So, and the school's also trying to kill them at all times.
Right.
And the idea is that like wizards have to go through this training because that's what the whole world is like. And if you are a wizard of any power, there'll be these beings who come from some abyss to try to like kill you and absorb your powers. So you have to go through this really intense schooling in order to better prepare you for life as a wizard on the outside. Mm-hmm. So there's just, it's a whole school full of kids, but there's a few main kids, and Orion, the guy, is trying to save everybody that he can. Right. Which sounds like a really good deed. In his mind, he thinks that he's being really good. Like, he legitimately thinks he can save everybody in the school if he just, you know, tries really hard.
Well, it's interesting about that because it never quite goes into his motivation for doing this stuff. All you learn from Chloe, especially, who knows him the longest out of all the characters in the book, is that even since he was very, very young, he just had a passion for destroying these beings that we're talking about that come and suck your mana out, which the book calls Maleficaria or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But we'll just call them like dark beings that
Mals.
are from the void. Mals. We'll call them Mals. So yeah, those are everywhere, and they're always trying to get at wizards because wizards have mana, and these things feast on mana. And then Chloe, who grew up with Orion, said that Orion always, no matter what, that was his shtick. Like, he just loved to fight Mals, like even when they were younger. Now, it doesn't quite go into why exactly he loves to fight Mals. It just goes into that's what he like really loves to do.
And he has the kind of magic where he can, if he kills a Mal, he can absorb their energy and get stronger. But he doesn't need to get stronger because he's already hooked up to his enclave. Right. So he's not motivated by the fact that it makes him strong, but that's probably been something he's gotten a lot of positive reinforcement from over the years, I imagine. Like, thanks, Orion, for saving us. You're the best. Mm-hmm. And he does, like, there is a selfless aspect to it because, like, the reason that he meets Elle is because he's trying to find the guy who killed the girl Louisa, who was trying to get help from him. I forget what their relationship was, but he was trying to kind of like avenge Louisa's death. So I think there's a vague, undefined sense of like, want to do the right thing. Yeah.
It seems like he took, yeah, you're right. I guess with that, and he's always like trying to, figure out which wizards are using the black magic and stuff. So I guess there is like kind of like he looks at himself as almost like in a police capacity somehow.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that it's not explained. He doesn't give a big speech at any point of
no, and as a matter of fact, if you want to read it just like, hey, he really likes to do this above all else. Like, in terms of, like, he would love to do it even if there wasn't an issue. Like, you could read it that way, too.
True.
You know?
Yeah, like, what if there wasn't such an easily defined Mal being? Would he start trying to go after other wizards of, like, you're not the best wizard you could be?
Who knows? Because all you really know is that he likes to kill the Mals, and what's weird is that he definitely doesn't like the adulation that it brings him. He just wants to kill the Mals. That's, like, all you know about him.
Yeah, he does not need to feed off of the popularity that he gets.
Well, he actually doesn't like it. Like, even like Chloe said that, like, he doesn't hang out with anybody because he's just bored of it. And Elle was the first person to, like, not like him, so he was like, ooh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Classic negging. Okay?
Men, take your cues. You can just go out and kill some monsters. Yeah. But yeah, his character was super interesting. So anyway, just to finish the recap. So he kills all of these characters, he kills all of these Mals. And basically he does not think for a second that would be a negative thing, but Elle is like, those monsters are hungry, and if you keep protecting the kids and the monsters don't get fed, eventually it's going to be really bad. And what happens at the end of every school year is graduation day. It sounds like just running this gauntlet through a bunch of monsters, It was terrifying. There was parts of the book that I was like, this is really scary and really intense to think about.
Yeah, the part at the end when they go down to the graduation to fix the burner.
Yeah.
Was it was pretty horrific.
So like all these students would have to go through this gauntlet of super duper hungry monsters, which sounds dumb when I say it like that, but it's scary. And that's why that's the problem that they have to fix, which is kind of the plot of the book.
Right. And the main negative impact too is that since Orion's killing all these mals and the mals can't get to the feed, it's also that more and more mals are coming up out of the abyss, like more so than ever before. Like they had that really crazy, the one that's a giant blob that everyone's super duper terrified of.
Oh yeah.
And that was a direct result of Orion kind of killing all the mals that he would eventually eat. And so that thing was eventually just like, all right, I'm getting out of here. Mm-hmm. Type of thing.
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting way to construct the story because it didn't give the kids any kind of, there's no big mission. There's no big like right or wrong, life or death. The crux of the plot is just we made a mistake and now we have to fix it. And they didn't go down there to fight for their own lives because it would be the class ahead of them. Elle and Orion are juniors. So like the class ahead of them that was about to graduate, they were the ones that were about to just be totally decimated by the monsters on graduation day. So right, I really liked that.
That was really good, yeah. And if you remember, like what the senior classes was going to do was they were going to let the mals loose in the school and just walk out the graduation. Because there's these certain like, you know, doors that kind of keep the mals in the graduation hall. But obviously they were voraciously trying to get out because they didn't have enough food because Orion's killing everybody. So the seniors were like, let's just open up the doors. And who cares about the underclassmen? The mals will just go like ravage the underclassmen and we'll just walk out. So that's why they went down because they're like, no, that's not happening. And then the seniors were like, all right, if that's not happening, then you guys have to figure out a way to solve this because you guys caused it with Orion. Yeah. So they were like, okay, that's when they make the team and they go down and, you know.
It's just really profound because none of that is framed as like the big senior bad guys. Because like what right do they have to say like, okay, we'll be the lambs to the slaughter? Like, I didn't feel like they were bad people for saying, well, the mals are coming in one way or another, so I don't want it to be me. Right. Because that's just a normal instinct.
Sure.
And it's put really bluntly and really starkly, and it's super sad, but I didn't think that they were horrible people because that's the way they wanted to solve it. Sure. They just didn't want everybody that they knew to die.
Right. And the whole idea of the Solar Man's really has nothing to do with right and wrong. It's just about survival. Like that's what the whole idea was. Because it's like, you know, because it says that like, you know, a certain percentage of kids die every year, like more and more as you keep going. And basically the whole idea is that's your training, is you learn how to survive in this environment. Because if you make it out, then chances are you learned a thing or two about being an effective wizard. Because if you wouldn't have learned those things, you'd be dead.
Yeah.
So the whole entire thing is about survival, really. And that's like what everyone's kind of... And that's cool too because it did give a heightened sense to that like teenage drama because, you know, Elle's always like, well, how's this going to make me look? Like, who can I get in with? Who do I want to be in with? And these are things that like every teenager thinks about, you know, in non-magical society.
Of course, yeah.
But here, you know, it mattered because it's literally your survival is on the line. Like, you know, did you form the right alliance? Did you do the right thing? Because if not, maybe you'll be dead.
Yeah, because you don't want to get pushed down the stairs when there's a mal coming up behind you. The stakes that are laid down in this book really got me. Like, you know, there was those social situations where you have to make friends or else you can die. And then I also really liked that concept of the debt of the school needing to, like, there's a debt that has to get paid and it's either going to be like your blood or my blood or somebody else's that we don't know, but it's at the end of the day like the schools needs to eat. And that concept of, there's another book that Naomi Novik wrote and she uses this concept of debt and it just gets my guts in a knot because there's nothing in my adult life that's as stressful or confining as like the idea of debt. It's kind of like how our society works now is on working to have money and then always needing more money to do certain things in life. But yeah, that just like I felt the gravity of the situation in a way that don't usually feel reading a young adult book, where it's like, oh, we need to save the kingdom to get the rightful king on the throne.
Right.
And where you're like, okay, I'm on board. Like, sure, I want the good guy to be in charge. But her being in this situation of like, I need to claw and fight my way to get this school back to 0. Like, I'm not trying to come out ahead. I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to get back to where we were, to like unfuck this problem. And that just like, yeah, that really got me.
Nice. Yeah, it was good. We were talking beforehand. You said that the book was somehow controversial.
Yeah, there's a lot of dialogue about the way that the book portrayed diversity in the school environment. And it's not something that, like, my opinion on that is not anyone's opinion that matters. But on the first pass of reading it, it sounded to me like she was describing what an elite boarding school would look like. To me, like, the Scholomance doesn't really exist in any one place. Yeah. It's just kind of like kids from all over the world were going there. And a lot of the spell books, the spells that you learned would come at you based on the languages that you knew. So there's kids that are kind of organized by the languages that they know. And that could also be because that's how the school is teaching them. But I don't...
But what specifically was the gripe by the people that would say, let's cancel this book?
Just that it was very surface level diversity, which is true. Like, there's a lot of different kids her friends are from. Like, one friend I think is
because they didn't teach you like the entire cultural history of Persia, but they were like sort of Persian person or something like that.
Yeah, and they made them like a supporting character in the way that they portrayed her father's family. Like scorning her, which I guess is an experience that a lot of people feel, like being and this I don't even know what I'm talking about. This is just based on Twitter. Right,
Twitter's not real anyway.
I don't know anyone who's been scorned by their family, but I know, like, yeah, I'm just gonna drop that. But that was the controversy about it. Okay. But I think the thing
seems weak.
The thing to take away is, like, I don't think that diverse representation should be solved by a white author being like, let me put some people in my book. Oh, yeah. Like, I think that's why certain aspects felt flat to someone, is because she's trying to create a culture that she's not a part of. And so her observations are going to be very surface level and miss the nuances. But there are other things that the nuances that she got, like the relationship between Elle and her mom, I thought was so sweet and so well done and so different for fantasy, because moms are usually dead or bad. And she has this mom who never questions that she loves her. They're close. Her mom has taught her how to be in the world with the powers that she has. And, like, the way she described that relationship, for instance, was so layered and so poignant that I can. And then there's other part of the books, like with her father's family, where she's just like, and then they seemed nice, but Grandma had a dream, and then I had to go away. And so it's maybe not an important part of the story, but you chose to have that side of the family be like the Hindi side, superstitiously throwing you out. Like, so maybe, and people were like, that's a little bit insensitive and a little bit broad. Oh, I gotcha. Which makes sense to me. So, but I don't have any answers for, like, you should do this, you shouldn't do this. I think it'll be better. Like, I'm sure there's going to be a movie about this. Yeah. And it's good that she created a world where there's a lot of different people from different places. True. So at least, like, the eventual movie version of this. And I think there's going to be at least 2 more books. I think it's a trilogy. So, you know, when they make the movie, that'll be like an opportunity to kind of grow those characters out a little bit more. Yeah. But I think it's weird too, when you're writing from first person, it's natural that she's not going to be narrating every aspect and detail of people's lives. Like, it's all as it applies to her current situation. So you can't incorporate as many details, I think, without having that idiot character who comes in and is like, hey guys, so what's up with the Sholemans?
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, well, it was founded in 745 AD by the first conclave.
Yep.
So, and they didn't have any of that. So the other criticism that I've read about the book is that the world building was a little bit
surface level.
Yeah, it's like a little bit weak.
Oh. I don't agree with that, but
yeah, what'd you think about like the magic and the way everything worked?
I thought it was great. Yeah, really good. I thought well, first of all, it kept my attention the whole time, which is all I look for really when I'm reading something. And yeah, no, I thought it was nothing wrong with it really. I'm interested. There's a really cool cliffhanger at the end when the mom sends the letter saying, "Watch out for Orion." So that's really cool. I'm just in my own head. I'm kind of like, conspiracy theories of what that might be.
Ooh, what's your theory?
I bet his parents are like maybe not so good wizards, and
true.
And I'm just guessing here, it's pure guess. And the mom realizes that they're just kind of like unsavory lot over there, and maybe like you'll kind of have like a Romeo Juliet situation, not exactly, but like one where Orion kind of rejects his parents later on. He's like, no, I'm a good guy, even though they're not so cool, type of thing.
Well, you can tell that you can see that he is a privileged person, obviously. The New York enclave that he's from is really wealthy with power and just material wealth. And in that way that he never really interrogates like why he's doing the things that he's doing. He's just like, this feels right, so I'm going to do it. And because it feels right, it must be right. And that's what got him in the whole bugaboo of like, you did save some people, but you're going to get a lot of other people killed. And to his credit, once he realized that, he felt terrible. But that was a situation where it's like, oh yeah, if you're a rich kid, you're not really taught to question whether you should or shouldn't do things. You just kind of do whatever you want because you have the resources to do whatever you want. Right.
The book definitely delved very much into classism, which I thought was really, really cool. It even went as far as to say at one point that the only reason that the Scholomance even was opened up to kids outside of enclaves is so that the enclave kids wouldn't get eaten, and they would make sure the other kids got eaten.
Yeah.
Like, it literally said that, which is cool. I mean, that's great, And yeah, the enclave kids are like just so much more set up for success. Like you said, they have like a never-ending supply of magic from their enclave. Yeah, it's just very much like kind of like elites versus non. There's even a maintenance track where one of the ways that people that aren't in enclaves survive is that they basically pick up, they do janitorial duties for the enclave kids. And that's like one way to do it, because the enclave kids are like, all right, well, he was a good janitor the entire time, and maybe we can make him a janitor of like the actual enclave when they get out of here. So very much like addresses classism head on, which was cool.
And it's not portrayed in a sneering Draco Malfoy way to like just segue into that whole can of worms. But
we should get into that can of worms.
But they're just kids who have grown up really rich, never questioned why they're rich and why other people aren't, and they don't have to. And some of them turn out to be massive turds, and some of them totally crack under the pressure of I could die. I've never felt this way before. Like that kid like Magnus or Tom, like I thought it showed the pressure that even really privileged kids can feel going to a new environment. Like you go to a new college and you realize you aren't like the coolest, most interesting person around, and that pressure really gets to you. But those kids just didn't see a way of survival because they realized they're not super likable, they're not super talented, and I think they just snapped. So the way the villainy in the book is, it also doesn't even feel like the school is the villain.
There wasn't really any villains.
Right. It's just sort of like, there's never going to be a right and a wrong path is not laid out in front of you by a white wizard and a dark, ugly wizard. Like, that's not the way the world works. These are just situations that come up and you have to figure the best way out of it.
Right.
And nothing is perfect. Like, there's people on the team who died, and that was that was really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an increasing demand in all of fantasy to like break the old standard tropes. Like you want kind of interesting characters, maybe even flawed characters. You want you want a more accurate portrayal of right and wrong just because it's more fun. You kind of immerse yourself in the world more that way, just because you can kind of relate it to your real life experience in a way. So yeah, I mean, it's always great when, but I like the opposite too. Like I've been watching a lot of like anime recently, and one of the things that I really love about anime is usually in the really good ones, there's one character that's like completely pure, you know, like the main character. He's like, you know, he's always excited about life. He always does the right thing no matter what, you know, like, and that's kind of fun too, in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're just kind of like, yeah, because it makes you be like, I can do that too. Like I can be that way, you know, type of thing.
No, that is definitely inspiring. Like I'm thinking about being a kid, and I truly feel like I was developed a moral compass based on the X-Men. And those kind of very clear aspirational stories, I think, have a place for kids. But I think that the responsibility of YA literature is changing now because the experience of being a kid is so different. Like you are a kid and you have an entire world of information at your fingertips, and you have the ability to have all these different relationships, whereas it used to be like the kids on my street and then the kids in my class.
Oh, through social media.
Yeah, and not to overly be like, well, when I was a kid, it was like, not to portray that with undue nostalgia, but I just feel like in YA they have a responsibility to show more nuanced situations and show kids thinking critically about things, because the pressure's on so much earlier because you're just given way more information.
Yep.
I wish I explained that better, but
no, we know.
Yeah,
we live in the world. We get it.
Yeah. Like there's just so much stuff coming at you.
So much
like,
stuff
from an early age that
unreal.
I thought it was cool that this book laid it out. Like things are going to be messy. It's okay to take a beat and figure out the consequences of your action. If you hurt people, you can't apologize for it. And some people do bad things, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. Like there's a lot that it touched on that I thought was really, it was really relevant and really meaningful. And I thought if I were a kid, and even as an adult, like you can take away a lot from the book.
Definitely. And one thing that really connected me to Elle is kind of the fact that, you know, she doesn't observe all these kind of like politenesses, and she might not even be like likable really when it comes down to it. Going back to my earlier point where you're just kind of like, Elle, like leave the kid alone. Like why must you constantly be bitching, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing is at the end of the day, she always makes like the most pure moral decisions out of every character in the entire book. Like when she went after the historically most deadliest mal ever, instead of letting the freshman get eaten, when she had the perfect opportunity to kind of like gain a status by rushing in and helping Orion in the library, she decided not to. And she was also rewarded for that by getting that sweet, sweet spell book. So I thought that was interesting. But let's talk the Harry Potter conversation. We're getting to our time, but let's just do a quick little Harry Potter conversation.
It has to be said.
Yeah,
because,
why don't you start?
Well, I don't know if the shadow is shortening now, but it does feel like every wizarding school story is going to get compared to Harry Potter in some way.
And do you feel that's unjust?
I do, because I'm sort of myself I was trying to find like other wizard school examples, and there's a lot that are better. Like in that book, Name of the Wind, he goes to school, right?
Yeah, but did Harry Potter come out first though?
Oh yeah, Harry Potter. I guess I don't know. I think it came out first. Or like the Wizard of Earthsea books, he goes to a school. So it's not like that was the first time that it had been done.
So you don't think Harry Potter was the first time the wizarding school had been done?
Correct.
Okay.
But I think she had some really catchy, she just put in some like really catchy imagery and lore, and like I think I was a little bit too old for Harry Potter when it came out to get super obsessed with it. Like I read them, but it wasn't the biggest touchstone of it wasn't my coming of age story. But I think this book is just, it's so groundbreaking for me because there's no teachers at the school.
That's good, yeah.
And there's nobody feeding the kids information or telling them like there's a right side and a wrong side.
That's good too.
And I feel like the arc of Harry Potter and so many stories like it's like what we've seen in the past couple of years, where if Voldemort got killed, all of those people that still supported him are still around there. It's never down to that one person being the problem. And you can't, if you are in a system where it's like there's a good side and a bad side, and if you kill the worst one, the bad side goes away, and if you put the best one in charge, all the good people fall in line. It's not like that.
Right.
And I just feel
Harry Potter wasn't that one-sided, I don't think. I thought it was more sophisticated than that.
I thought it was like, well, at the end of the books and the movie, like Voldemort just dies.
Sure.
There's an allusion to a rebuilding period, but then they cut to Harry and everybody being adults and they're still on the train going to Hogwarts. Like, the idea is nothing changes. It's this conservative view in fantasy of like you are trying to prevent things from changing if you're the good guy. Like, keep things the way that they are. And it's just ringing a little bit irrelevant to me.
That's interesting.
And I didn't think about it until like getting into this book. And when we were reading The Witcher too, I was like, you don't really have to like, you can just do what you want and protect the people around you. It doesn't have to be some big mission.
Right. Well, yeah, we'll slowly, I mean, I think as the world turns, you know, there's always going to be a call to take old tropes and turn them on their head, because that's just like, you know, just the way you progress. But as far as whether or not I personally, regardless of how I feel about Harry Potter, am completely cool with every single book that's set in a wizarding school being compared against Harry Potter. Because sorry, bud, you've heard of it, okay? And
sure, yeah.
And here's the other thing too. It's very much like I'll make the allusion to like, or the whatever it's called, the comparison to music. Let's say you want to talk about something like, because whenever something gets gigantic like Harry Potter, it doesn't quite matter if it's the first to do it or not. What matters is the space that it occupies. So Harry Potter occupies this really big, gigantic ass space, kind of like ketchup, right? Because if you were to come out with a new sauce that wasn't spicy and tomato based and goes with fries, you're going to have to compete against ketchup, buddy. You know? So if you're going to make like a wizarding school book, yeah, you're going to be compared to Harry Potter in the same way that, like, you know, but you improve upon it, right? Or maybe not even improve, but you turn the tropes on their head. And the perfect example, to me at least, is we can talk about like Led Zeppelin and the Delta Blues, right? Because the blues, is very clear that Led Zeppelin took from the blues. Not only took, I mean, they straight up stole certain riffs from like people like Robert Johnson and people like that. Now, Robert Johnson became like kind of almost like the Harry Potter of the Delta Blues. He certainly wasn't the first person to play Delta Blues. He certainly wasn't. He wasn't even popular during his time. For some reason, he just occupied that space as time went along. So, of course, if you're Led Zeppelin and you're stealing these riffs, people are going to be like, hey, you better pay homage to these riffs that you're stealing, even though your music does sound very different because you're Led Zeppelin. You got a boatload of distortion on there. Your drummer's crazy. You got fireworks going off. And that is almost like the twist of like what this book does to the Wizarding School story, right? It's like the Led Zeppelin, where the Harry Potter is this big, you know, it's just what you associate with it, in the same way that what you associate with the Delta Blues is Robert Johnson. So I just think that like it's unfair to me, regardless of how I feel about Harry Potter, it would be unfair to not mention it every single time someone puts out a Wizarding School book.
See, I just feel like it reduces the conversation of like, it reduces it to how is it like Harry Potter and how is it not like Harry Potter. And I was reading like 100 Amazon reviews of this book, and at least 60% of the titles had this line, not your mama's Harry Potter, or something dumb like that.
Right, but I'm cool with that.
And it's like, she's not trying to do...
But she wrote a Wizarding School book. Okay. So she is trying to do...
I just think that the way that I think that those comparisons are going to die off. I don't know what's going to replace it, but I think that Harry Potter it's quickly becoming less culturally relevant.
Okay, well, I don't know about that.
Time will tell, so we can revisit it in 10 years or something.
Time will tell. Well, all I'll say is my opinion is not that, but my opinion is that if you put out a Wizarding School book, you are going to be compared to Harry Potter forever.
All right. Yeah, I guess
In 20 years, in 50 years, like all these things.
No. I disagree. I think it's going to go away.
Really?
Yeah.
But it's the wizarding school genre. Like, I don't think all fantasy, certainly not all fantasy, never know. Like, you don't have to mention Harry Potter unless you write a school about or unless you write a book about a wizarding school. That's the only time.
Do you feel like there were call-outs in this book to Harry Potter? Like the fact that Hogwarts has such its own identity, and in this book the school was also like felt like a thing. And just the way like it felt like a lot of it was the opposite. And I don't know if that's...
Well, I will say this. I would bet every single thing on earth on the fact that when writing this book, this person was constantly thinking of Harry Potter. Constantly.
I do agree with that.
How to distance herself from Harry Potter, how to add to the conversation somehow and not just write Harry Potter all over again.
Yeah.
And she accomplished it, and it's great. It's a wonderful book. I would definitely recommend it. But, you know, Harry Potter looms.
Harry Potter looms. Shall we end it there?
Yeah, let's end it there. Yeah, so for our next book, if any of our 4 listeners want to follow along, we're going to do Neuromancer. Is that what it's called? Necromancer? Neuromancer?
I think it's Neuromancer.
Maybe it's Neuromancer.
But you suggested it, so you should know.
I suggested it. I should know. It's by William Gibson. We all know what I'm talking about. Everyone's heard of the book, whether you read it or not. Yeah, it's Neuromancer. It's like a sci-fi cyber situation. And yeah, I'm excited to see what all the hubbub's about regarding that.
All right, me too. See you in a couple of weeks, I guess.